We are going to begin next with the race for sheriff. And so we are going to go with the two candidates. We are going to begin with the incumbent, with David Favro, and then we will hear from Chelsea Warick. We do want to mention we reached out, the League of the Champlain Valley Business and Professional Women did reach out to the second write-in candidate, Scott Decker, who had another commitment tonight and said he was unable to attend. So two of the candidates are here, and we will start with David Favro first. And the candidates are going to get 5 minutes each to talk and address the crowd. All of the candidates will get 5 minutes. Then we will take questions later on. Thanks.
Good evening. Thank you. I'd like to thank the folks of the Business and Professional Women's Club for putting this together and for the invitation this evening to give an opportunity to come up and speak with everybody. I'm David Favro. I've been the Clinton County Sheriff for 20 years. I'm in my 20th year right now. I came from the Plattsburgh City Police Department. I started there in 1982. I was promoted to the position of detective, where I ran the juvenile division for over 10 years. I started the DARE program in 1991 and was also the co-founder of the PAL football program that now shares over 700 young people playing tackle football and flag football throughout the Tri-County area. I started that with my partner at the time, Kurt Tobrock. We started with 42 young people playing football, and the program now, like I said, is being grown up to the size that it is amazing, wonderful accomplishment. I went on in my career and did an awful lot of programs. We secured a van to do juvenile programs. We did a robot to do many juvenile programs, and had a wonderful experience. I was asked to run for the position of sheriff in 2002. I did that with the Democratic endorsement and with the Working Family Party endorsement. We had a successful campaign, and I've been sheriff since then. I've served 5 consecutive 4-year terms as your sheriff, and I'm seeking my 6th term right now. As sheriff, we have brought in millions of dollars in grants that we have used to pay for equipment, training, and multiple programs that we have brought to Clinton County. My number one priority was to try and enhance public safety, to make sure that in our community we had a good, strong quality of life so that businesses would want to come here, people would want to come here, they would want to raise families and continue to grow in this community. And we've worked hard to do that. We've also had a very successful jail operation. We have run in the black with our budget for 18 of the 20 years. The 2 years that we did not were the years of construction because the facility was wide open and we had energy costs, we had overtime costs to try and man the staffing of that. So we've had really good luck with that piece. We haven't purchased any vehicles off our taxpayer budget, off the base budget. We've purchased them through grants, through various programs that we've been involved in and we've worked with. Most recently, approximately 5 years ago, we started a special response team. One of the biggest challenges as a law enforcement executive in any community is trying to forecast and stay ahead of what is going to happen in the future. There's no magical answer to it. It's just trying to project and see what's going on in other communities and see what might be coming to our community so we can get out ahead of it as much as we possibly can. We've done that very successfully in many areas. However, I will admit, in 2019, 2020, I did not see COVID coming. I don't know if anybody did. That was a big challenge. The last 4 years for any administrator in any business has been an unbelievable challenge. Trying to maintain people, trying to keep your staff healthy, even complicated even more by trying to deal with inmates, people that don't want to be detained in a facility, and trying to keep them safe, healthy, and treat them securely and humanely was an unbelievable challenge, but our staff rose to that challenge. Many communities ended up declaring states of emergency. They had problems with jail staffing. They had problems with law enforcement responses. We were able to keep the jail operational It basically was shut down as far as visitation and other programs that came into the facility for almost 2 years because the obvious spread of COVID and because of the regulations from the state with facilities of that nature, nursing homes, jails, etc. Two other things that we didn't see coming is the bail reform. The bail reform that was actually signed in April of 2019 posed a significant challenge for all of us. As I said, as a law enforcement executive, public safety is paramount. And with public safety, bail reform posed some serious complications with that. We tried to work with bail reform as much as we possibly could, but the direct impact that it had on us in this county, and specifically with the jail operation, is it decreased our population from approximately 253 average daily population down to 107 in a matter of a year. What was that? 5 minutes. That was 5 minutes? Oh, okay. That was a significant change, and it created an awful lot of problems. We had a couple really good programs that were in place that we wanted to implement, and we were not able to do so because, as I said, our population dropped down, as you can tell, from 253 to 107. So we weren't able to implement those particular programs, but we've kept a lot of smaller programs and things going. We kept our staff healthy, we kept the operation running, and we have left Clinton County a much safer place than it was previously. Thank you very much for your time.
All right, thank you. And now Chelsea Warick, who is a write-in candidate. I should have mentioned Dave Favreau is the Democratic and Working Families Party candidate on the ballot, and Chelsea Warick is running as a write-in candidate.
Hello, everyone. My name is Chelsea Warick. As he said, I am running as a write-in candidate for Clinton County Sheriff. I am endorsed by the Republican Party, however, but I will not appear on the ballot. You will have to write my name in if you do choose to vote for me. So I'll start as I do have a criminal justice degree and with a concentration in investigative services from the University of New Haven in Connecticut. I also have a minor in sociology. Starting in 2013, I worked as a deputy sheriff for the Clinton County Sheriff's Department for nearly 10 years until I just recently resigned in July of this year. A major reason why I resigned and an issue that has pushed me to decide to run and start creating change within the department and for our community as ourselves was my inability to pump breast milk for my child during paid meal breaks. I had to file a grievance and I had to fight against being able to have meal breaks on the force. The current sheriff and the county stated that law enforcement officers were not entitled to make meal breaks. So that was kind of my major push to really start making change, and then I had faced some retaliation for filing a complaint with New York State in regards to that. So I finally decided to stop fighting within the agency and get out and try to push for change when I was no longer employed there. So some major things I want to see changed is focus on, Sheriff Favreau did start the DARE, and that I think it was a great program. However, he has lost sight of that, and since COVID, we no longer have DARE within our schools. In the past 4 years, we have lost 5 certified SRO officers, school resource officers, and DARE officers. Unfortunately, we've also lost the number of school resource officers within the county. I would like to focus on increasing that number, bringing the DARE program back, and focusing on community policing. Another huge issue is the mental health crisis within our county. There's been talks for years about we need to figure out how to work on, how do we fight this problem? But it's been talk. The huge thing is communication. We have so many resources within our agency, but no one is talking. I would like to bridge that gap between law enforcement and the Sheriff's Department and our mental health resources. I think that it'd be a huge improvement and help for our county as a whole if we're not wasting officers' time picking up someone who clearly has more of a mental health issue than a criminal issue, bringing them to the hospital, they're being released because they don't meet that criteria, and we're going back out and picking them up again. I have seen this on the road firsthand, time and time again, and nothing seems to change. The officers on the road aren't being informed on how to really deal with this crisis, and I would like to do that. Also, I feel that the Sheriff's Office doesn't have a primary leadership. I want to be present there. The lack of morale and discrimination and harassment that goes on within that agency is just not acceptable. I feel that with a leader that will be present and active within that department, people will act appropriately and how they know they can or cannot be accepted or treated. So that in itself is a huge issue. Another one is drugs. We are seeing a lot of drugs in our community as well. It's kind of tied with mental health, I think. But with our drug enforcement, it's more of trying to cut the head off the snake and the big press releases, not dealing with the smaller drug crimes that would really actually affect our community and help improve it. So I really would like to take a different stance and approach to our drug enforcement. That's really some of the prime concerns I think that just aren't talked about and really actually aren't acted upon. I think it's time that we actually do something to improve our community and not just talk about it. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Chelsea. We are now going to invite Matt Castelli to come up. Matt is running for Congress, New York 21 Congressional District. Matt is the Democratic candidate, also running on the moderate ballot line, and we appreciate him being here tonight. We are going to take things a little out of order. If you have questions for Matt, please jot them down now and get them to me. Matt is going to take questions right after he speaks because he's heading on out the door, and we'll continue on with the rest of the program. So if you have questions for Matt, please jot them down and get them right up to me, okay? Matt, welcome.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it. Thank you, Tom, and thank you to BPW for having me here today to talk a little bit about our campaign and who I am, why I'm running for Congress. I'll start off with that. Happy to take your questions. I know it might be a bit of a foreign concept to have a congressional candidate here before you in the community answering your questions, but that's what this campaign is all about. It's about showing up. I'm Matt Castelli, running for Congress, probably the two most important things you can take away with you here tonight. Upstate New York guy, born and raised, went to college at Siena. Grew up in a bipartisan household. Dad's the Democrat, mom's the Republican. And for much of my life, I was an independent. When I was in college at Siena, 9/11 happened, and that set me on a path to serve my country. I joined the CIA, served there for nearly 15 years, led teams hunting down some of the world's most dangerous terrorists. I worked in the same department that found Osama bin Laden. I served in Afghanistan and Iraq, and had enough success doing all of that I was tapped by the Obama White House to come down and serve as the director for counterterrorism at the National Security Council. A role I was asked by the Trump administration to stay on in, and I did, for the first year of the Trump White House. Because when it comes to our safety, our security, and our strength, it requires us to put country before party, and my belief in that has never wavered. Now, I went back to CIA, did some work with cutting-edge technology startups, got a business degree out at Northwestern at the Kellogg School of Management, and then COVID hit. Marked a watershed moment for all of us because pretty quickly in the pandemic, we were getting to a point where we had a 9/11 every single day in terms of deaths in this country. And so I left government, and I joined a healthcare organization right here in New York, started by a couple of veterans to better coordinate care for veterans, rural communities, by connecting health and social care together. That's where health and well-being really happens in our communities. I was building out coordinated care networks throughout the Northeast, loved what I was doing, and then January 6th happened. Now, you might imagine a former counterterrorism guy like myself who spent a career trying to prevent things like that from happening in foreign capitals. To see it happen in our own didn't sit well with me. But what really didn't sit well with me was the response by many elected officials in our government, to include our incumbent Congresswoman Elise Stefanik. I think she turned her back on our democracy that day. And it's one of the reasons why I'm running in this race, because we need somebody who's going to uphold their oath to the Constitution, the same oath I took when I joined the CIA many years ago. So that's what we're focused on here in this race is, yes, defending our democracy from attacks like that and those ongoing threats. But as we've traveled throughout the 15 counties that make up New York 21, big district, I put about 55,000 miles or so on my truck, getting out in the community, talking with folks, having town halls. We'll actually be having one here in Clinton County just next week, where we're listening to folks about their issues and their challenges and their hopes and their dreams. And what I hear from folks is that they're tired of the extremes. They're tired of the divisiveness. And they want a moderate, someone who's going to bring us together to actually start solving some problems rather than creating problems. So some of the things we're focused on in this race, and I'm sure we'll get to some of these issues when we answer some of the questions, we're going to fight to reduce the costs for working families and seniors and make sure that we have a strong economy that works for everyone. We're going to fight to defend our freedoms, which are currently under attack, particularly a woman's right to control her own body and make her own health care decisions, as well as the Second Amendment. And we're going to fight for our safety and security and our strength, certainly by fully funding our law enforcement, securing our borders, but fighting to protect and defend our democracy, and also thinking about security in a different lens, talking about it in terms of the access to health care we have in our community and the kind of security we get from that. We're making sure we're in a position to help grow our economy and the security that comes from that. So those are the issues that we're really focused on at this stage of the campaign, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you all have.
Thank you, Dan. I'll just borrow this for a second. We have one question so far. What do you feel you know about the needs of the North Country of New York, and what would you like to know?
Well, what I know is derived from listening. As I was just discussing, the prospect of being out and in the community, having meet and greets, having round tables, having town halls that we've had in every single community. One of the things you can see, we're recording all of those and putting them online. So even if you can't make our one here in Clinton County next week, you can have access to it in the aftermath. And it's about showing up. So I'll highlight an example in terms of a women's roundtable that we had a couple of weeks ago. And some of the issues that I was hearing from women in particular were about the challenges that we're facing. The sandwich effect of the challenges about childcare as well as elder care and the need for that in our community. The challenges we're having, certainly finding access to other forms of care, whether that's mental health resources for our children, making sure we're in a position to physically access healthcare in many of our rural communities. The kinds of investments that we need aren't there anymore. They haven't been there for quite some time. And so these are the main challenges that I see in terms of the kinds of investments that are required to create a community that can thrive. We've been talking about these a little bit here today. How do we create access to childcare? How do we create opportunities to make investments in affordable housing, which is a key challenge that some of our friends in North Country Public Radio have been highlighting in recent weeks, and I think doing a good job of just that. So these are the kinds of areas that we need investments in. What we're really been eliciting right now is the top issues. And what I will always want to know is what is on your minds. And by providing that, not just in town halls, but sending us emails, posting stuff on social media, sharing your thoughts. This is about, at least my view on representation, it's about lifting up your voices and bringing them down to Washington, D.C. and making sure we're getting the kind of results that we need in our community.
Thank you. And I should mention for the candidates, we're going to keep the responses to about 1:30 for the questions. Next question, do you feel the majority of people at the Capitol were exercising their right to peaceful protest, or do you view them as insurrectionists?
It's hard to define majority. We certainly all know what we saw on television that day. And one of the stories that I sometimes tell on the campaign trail is I got a phone call that afternoon from one of my favorite people in the world, my niece Hannah, who's 7. My sister was watching the events of the insurrection, the violent insurrection that occurred that day, because we saw what was the worst assault against law enforcement in our nation's history. 5 police officers died in the aftermath, over 140 injured. And my sister became visibly upset as she watched it all unfolding. So many of us were. And my niece saw my sister upset, and she asked her what was wrong. My sister described for her what was happening. Said, some bad people are hurting good people in Washington, D.C. And without skipping a beat, my 7-year-old niece asked, is Uncle Matt one of the good people getting hurt? And so I got a phone call from Hannah to tell her that everything was okay, I was fine, and reassure her of that. But we talked about how violence was never the right answer to address our differences, because good people did get hurt that day. Some people did die. What happened on January 6th was not legitimate political discourse, as some may have you believe. It was a violent insurrection. and it was not okay, and our kids were watching.
Any other questions for Matt Castelli? Thank you for coming tonight. We appreciate it. We will now move on to the city council races in Plattsburgh, and we will go in the order of the wards. So let's begin with Ward 1, and that will be Julie Baughn, running on the Democratic ballot line.
I have to use cheat notes, just so everybody knows. My name is Julie Baughn. I am running for Ward 1. As of right now, I am running unopposed. I'm assuming no one's going to write in. It would be devastating for me. I have lived in Plattsburgh all my life, with the exception of a small amount of time when I was in the military and I went away to be married and have children and live all over the world. I currently live in the house that I grew up in on Main Mill Street. And I was gifted that from my brother, and I love being back where I was raised. It's wonderful living there. I'm in the familiar neighborhood. Everything there is changed, so I'm reacquainting myself with everything. I have served on many councils or committees around the area. I am a small business owner. I was the manager of the farmers market for many years, and I enjoy being out in the community. I enjoy being with the people. I just love just getting along with everyone in the area. And my main goal is really, we need to be fiscally accountable for everything that's going on in this city. There is a lot of things that I feel strongly about, as far as I believe that preventative maintenance, the one thing that comes to mind right now is the $1.5 million that is being put into the playgrounds and the parks in the area. I always believe in preventative maintenance. You don't have to spend $1.5 million to fix something that should have been maintained right along. And I believe in that with everything. So I do feel that there are other outlets, and there is other ways to prevent and to fix these things. But I don't know everything yet, because this is all very new to me, and I don't know numbers. I don't know everything until I'm on that council, and I see the numbers. I see and I hear and I ask the questions. But as of right now, those are my main goals. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Julie. We will now go to the Ward 4 race, and we are going alphabetically, and so we have two Ts, so Talon is before Trombley, so we will welcome up Jennifer Tallon. She is running on the Democratic and the Working Families ballot lines, and she is the incumbent, and welcome.
Thank you, Tom. Good evening, everybody. My name is Jennifer Tallon, and I am thrilled to be here. Thank you so much to the Champlain Valley Business Professional Women's Organization for inviting me to be here tonight. This is funny because I did this back in 2020, and this room was a lot different. We had socially distanced chairs. There was about maybe half as many people in this room. So this is quite a different experience, so I'm enjoying this a little bit better tonight. I have lived in Plattsburgh pretty much all of my life. I went to college in Albany, so those are the years that I was not living in Plattsburgh, and I live in the childhood home that I grew up in. I am the child of divorced parents, as many of us that were born in the 70s are. So I grew up with my mother in a house on Adams Street. And my father, he lived out in Beekmantown when I was growing up, so I used to go visit him, spend time with him on the weekend. And my aunt's over there too. And my mom, she did not have very much of an income. She had trouble with maintaining jobs sometimes. So I understand what it's like to grow up in a low-income household. So that's, just something that's part of my story and something that helped me develop a lot of empathy for those that grow up in low-income households. I am not a businesswoman per se, but I am definitely a woman of the community. Back in 2016, after an election happened, a lot of us decided that we wanted to get involved in big ways to make change happen because we didn't like what was going on. So I tried to get involved in as many things as I possibly could. In 2016, the group North Country Respect got started, and we organized an event to go along with the Women's March in January of 2017. And from that event, we saw exactly how many people did want to get involved in their community to make change. So that happened, and then I was involved in the People's Climate March in 2017, which got people out there showing that they cared about what was going on due to climate change and how they wanted to try to take measures to try to keep it from getting as bad as it possibly could. As a matter of fact, over the weekend on Saturday, we had an event over at the Farmers Market building, Friendly Conversations About the Climate, where people came out to find out what they could do on a local level. People were learning about composting, about things that are going on with the lake, and it was a very good event. And I am also an allied member of the Adirondack North Country Gender Alliance, as I am a strong believer in fighting for equality and fairness. And we are the organizers of the Pride event every year. As a matter of fact, this was the first year we ever had a street parade for the Pride event, so that's something that I am definitely very proud to say that I was involved in, and hoping we'll keep having that year after year and it'll just get bigger and better. I am almost done with my first 2 years on City Council. When I was elected to fill out the rest of the term. Somebody else got elected for the first part of it, and then he decided he didn't want the job anymore after the pandemic started hitting, and there were a lot of furloughs in the city, and just he realized it wasn't the job that he had signed up for. And then somebody else took the job, but then he decided he didn't want to run for the position, so that meant that a candidate was needed, and we asked other people, and nobody was interested at the time because City Council, it's not a sought-after position, let's be honest. Just basically, we are out there in front of the community for, people to just lob every accusation at us when things are not going the way they want it to. So really, just anybody who runs for this position, they're brave. I told Chelsea, you're brave for running at all. So here I am. I was elected to the position, and I'm very grateful for that every single day. And I would like to be reelected for 3 years because I feel that, 2 years just isn't enough to see exactly, what you can do. It's basically you're learning on the job as you go. You don't sit in that chair in your first meeting and know what's going on. As a matter of fact, the first few meetings after I got elected, that was during the pandemic. We had Zoom meetings. So it's really hard to kind of get to know what the feel is like, for being in that room when you're on a Zoom meeting. So we finally started having the in-person in City Hall meetings in May of 2021. So that's when things started changing. That's when things were like, okay, so I am getting to know this job more and more. And what's important is I like the people that I work with, and I'd like to keep working with them. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. And now, please welcome Hillary Trombley, running on the Hillary for Ward 4 ballot line. Welcome.
Okay. Hello. Very close. Thank you very much for having me. This is my first time being involved in politics, so I appreciate the welcoming everybody's given me in this community so far. My name is Hillary Trombley. I've grown up in Plattsburgh. I did go to SUNY Potsdam for 4 years. I graduated from Potsdam with a degree in secondary education. Went into the field for a little while and decided, growing up in a business atmosphere, that's where I belonged. So for the last 15 years, I've held a real estate license with a local real estate company, and I've been in sales my whole life. So the career I'm in right now is intense. I do a lot of traveling. I do a lot of interaction with people. I'm learning through my real estate career how to do budgeting, expensing, financial reporting, strategic planning for events, negotiations. There are several things that in a business world I believe will be impactful if I get elected for the council position. I also have 4 children. I have 2 of my own and 2 stepchildren. We are living in Plattsburgh. We're growing up in Plattsburgh, and I'm trying to make this place a better place for them to live and hopefully stay. They're all involved in youth sports. I have some concerns about the things that are going on in the city for involvement for children, for involvement in youth, things that we can do for the future of our children. There are some fiscal situations that are going on that concern me deeply. I'm worried about what we're going to leave for them. What are we going to leave in the city of Plattsburgh for people to want to stay here, for people to want to come back here? How hard is it going to be to live here based on all of these big plans that we have? And I back the idea of growing our community and doing better things for our community, but what concerns me is our care for the things we have now. There's a lot of things, you know, as I can't remember who said it, but Julie, you know, we aren't taking care of what we have. And I have some concerns about that with what we have, and, you know, to keep spending more money. And the plan from what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing is by 2027, it's a great amount of debt. And we don't really have a lot of a plan of how we're going to pay it. And that concerns me. And I don't want to see that. I don't want to see that for our future. I want to make the future better for our children, for business owners, for community members. You know, there's some situations that have happened years back where that's what got me involved. I watched a meeting a few years ago where some of my dearest friends were losing their jobs on Zoom. That broke my heart for them. I didn't feel like that was the way to do it. While some of them have gotten their jobs back, I still have concerns about the way we're moving forward. I am all about advocating for action. I look forward to the opportunity to collaborate with these organizations to make a difference. I've already started. It's been a lot of fun. I've gotten out into the community over the last couple of months. I got to do it more for the primary, but the last couple of months have been actually very fun. I've had a great team of people working with me. I got to go out with Matt Castelli last weekend, and we're knocking on doors, and I'm meeting neighbors, and I'm hearing great things. I'm hearing some concerning things and a lot of helpful things that I believe will make me better for this position. My phone is always on. With my job, I don't have hours. I always answer the phone. I always return calls. I check my email regularly. You can come to my house. Our door's always open. I am all about common sense governing, and I'm a common sense candidate. And I appreciate everybody's support so far, and I look forward to the opportunity to working with many of you in the community. How'd I do?
Thank you, Hillary. We do want to mention that we, as always, acknowledge our friends with the League of Women Voters. They are a great group. They always assist with events like these. They assist us at Mountain Lake PBS with our debates. We have one coming up this week, tomorrow, as a matter of fact, with Dan Steck and Jean Lapper. And the League of Women Voters, as always, will be the official timers and helping us host the debate. So they are truly a wonderful organization, and we appreciate all that they do. Speaking of that, both Dan Steck and Jean Lapper were unable to be here tonight. They did have other commitments. We also want to mention that the BPW did reach out to Elise Stefanik, to the Congresswoman's office, and she was not able to make it tonight as well. So we did reach out to those candidates, and they had other obligations going on tonight and weren't able to be here. So for the questions now, if we're ready to move on to the questions, sure, I'll take them.
It's for Dave.
All right, very good. The majority of the questions are for the sheriff's candidates. So why don't we start? If you have questions for the city council candidates, please get them to me now, and we'll come back to those. I'm going to start with one for the city council, and then we'll get to the sheriff's candidates' questions. For Jennifer Tallon, if you want to come up, Jen, this first question is for you. Jen, in your first 2 years as a city councilor, what have you learned? What have you accomplished for your ward and for the city as a whole? So for your first 2 years as a councilor, what have you learned and what have you accomplished for your ward and the city as a whole? And again, about 2 minutes to respond to questions, please.
Okay, what have I learned? Well, you learn that there's always more to learn on city council. You go in there and you are learning on the job. So what have I learned? I have learned that, most of the decisions we make are things that we absolutely need for our city to keep it functioning. If, something needs to be fixed, we have to fix it. Like, for example, the 18 water main breaks in Lake Country Village, we need to vote right away to have the emergency funds to fix that. And they've done a great job. And I think DPW is to be commended along with the companies that have been worked with them. And so that's definitely something that we learned about really quick. For my ward specifically, that's difficult to say because most of the decisions we make affect the city as a whole. So things for the ward that I have done directly, well, there is a park over by Broadway that I was informed had some weed overgrowth and that there was some drug dealing going on behind it. So a constituent let me know about this. I informed the mayor and I informed DPW, and the overgrowth was cut down within a week. So that problem was taken care of. The truth is, not a whole lot of constituents contact me about issues. Probably the biggest issue that anybody ever contacted me about during my term was when there was the proposed backyard fire ban. That got the whole city angry. And I am proud to say I was very much opposed to that ban. And I remember I must have answered probably about at least 30 to 40 emails about that. So I guess that's something that I have done for my ward. And what was the last part of the question?
For your ward and for the city as a whole.
For the city as a whole?
And you have just a few seconds left.
Okay, well, for the city as a whole, just we're trying to show that progress is possible. And just, it's hard to pinpoint exactly what that means, but we do want to develop what's already there. We do want to fix what's already there. Like putting the money into the parks, that is a good idea. Because that way we will be fixing what we do have. So I think that's all I got right now.
And actually, stay right here. Stay right here. We have some other questions coming in. So since Jennifer's right here, we'll start with Jennifer, and then Hillary will have you come up and answer the same question. This is to both of you. So what is your position on the Margaret Street project, and how can the city best maintain a vibrant downtown while the project is underway? Your position on the Margaret Street project, and how can the city best maintain a vibrant downtown while the project is underway? 2 minutes, if we could.
Okay, well, first, the position about the Margaret Street project is point number one. The pipe underneath Margaret Street is very old. If it were to, something were to happen to it, that would take out downtown for a while. So that's why we are planning to have it fixed. But to have it fixed, you have to tear up the street. So this is an opportunity to make it maybe a little bit nicer. As for the one-way proposal, I wasn't crazy about that at all. I didn't like the survey that was put out, in which a majority of people did vote to keep it a two-way. But the thing is, it probably could have been kept a two-way, but people did not want to give up the parking on that one area of Margaret Street between Court Street and Brinkerhoff. Just if there would have been, they would have been willing to give up some parking spaces, then, you know, we could have made it work. But it's very tight there. I think you've seen it. And also, it's not very safe for pedestrians when you're crossing the street. I know whenever there's a car parked there, I always have to kind of go out into the street, take a look, and just, sometimes it's just like, oh, sometimes you have to jump back because there's a car coming. And just, you know, I want to see safer streets for our pedestrians. And we've got a plan to put bike paths down there. And the interesting thing about the plan is, you know, just, it's a plan. And there are things called change orders. So plans can change sometimes. So that's, you know, hopefully what will happen is maybe we can put in a change. And it's been said that if the one-way portion doesn't work out, then they can just make it a two-way. So just importantly, the pipe needs to be fixed. We don't want it to break. We saw what happened to Lake Country Village.
Thank you, Jennifer. And Hillary? Same question, I'll read it again.
Okay.
What is your position on the Margaret Street project, and how can the city best maintain a vibrant downtown while the project is underway?
Okay.
2 minutes.
Okay. I'll start with the conversations I've had with the downtown business owners. It's not a very welcomed project by a lot of them because of what it's going to do to their parking, to people getting access to them. They're very frustrated because no one's really run anything by them or talked to them. The paid parking downtown, I think that it's a terrible time to do it. I'm not saying that in the future it's not a good idea. I just think when we're about to tear up downtown, to put in paid parking is not the right time. It is vibrant now. People are down there. There are restaurants. I don't think that we need to tear anything up just yet. I think we need to focus on the infrastructure issues that we already have. I hear that there's a one-way street. I hear there's a backup plan to turn it back to two-way. I just don't think now is the right time. Now I have to do more research on that. That's something that I don't feel is being done before a lot of votes are happening. We're not asking those questions. We're not canvassing the businesses. We're not talking to the people who are directly involved. So before we make those big moves, consider their businesses. Consider how they're affected. And that's something I've already done, is talk to the business owners.
Thank you, Hillary. Stay right here. There's another question, and this is a question I'm going to need a little help with. Perhaps I see city councilors here who can explain this to me. The question is, how do you plan to ensure F0203 continues to be monitored? It's an E. It's an E. I'm sorry. So
Executive Order 203.
Executive Order 203. Okay, thank you. So
Thank you. Someone could elaborate a
Could-
little bit on that.
So that had to do with police reform that came down from the governor's office
Okay.
years ago. And each municipality, including the city of Plattsburgh and the county, had to put a panel together.
okay.
Ultimately, the mayor and the council put together a committee that worked on a plan. And so just curious how, as a council person, you would move forward with ensuring that that would continue to be part of the city plan.
Thank you.
Is this just for me?
No, for both of you.
Okay,
So
okay.
We'll start with you since you're
Okay,
right up
I'm
here.
right here.
2 minutes. Thank you.
It all starts with training and education. When it comes down to policing, when it comes down to anything in law enforcement, it goes into training and education. Consistent training, consistent education. I understand that this has been an issue for a while, and this is getting worse in our nation and the world. But I believe that that's something that should be taken seriously. I'm not saying it's not currently in the city of Plattsburgh, but I believe that with training, we can send them to conferences, we can have training here, we have facilities to do that. That's where the answer is in the continuing education and in the training. And I'd love to be involved with finding resources for that to happen more.
Thank you. And Jennifer, same question for you.
I'm good to go.
You are. Thank you. We're trying to keep the trips down, so you don't have to keep walking.
Thank you. Well, I suppose the first step would be asking the mayor if we could keep a committee going about it to keep the discussions ongoing and speak to the people that were on that panel to see if they want to keep stay involved in all that they have put together. And yeah, just there needs to be, you know, more conversations about, you know, just what is fair policing. And sorry. Just, yeah, and we need to have, you know, more conversations with mental health professionals about how we can all work together, and just, because it's basically a community effort. Just everybody has to work together on it. And that's all I got.
Very good. All right, we will now start with the questions for the sheriff candidates. We do have about 4 or 5 for each of them. Again, we're going to 2 minutes, but if you want to keep it shorter, we'll get in more questions. So Sheriff Favreau, why don't we begin with you? And let's do this. We'll take 2 questions at a time since you're up here, but then we'll bring the other candidate up for 2 other questions and just keep it going back and forth, okay? I also should mention, we did reach out to Billy Jones and Stephen Chilton as well, though I forgot to mention that as well. They also had other obligations going on tonight and couldn't be here, so they were invited to come and participate. Sheriff, the first question for you is, in the past few weeks, we have seen on the news that you have an open door policy for your employees, but yet each one has said that it is not true. How do you intend to make it easier for your employees to reach you? 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, let me start by correcting that. Not each of them have said it's not true. There are some of them that have said it's not true. The door is open. There is a policy where people can certainly come in. They can talk to me. I'm an approachable person. Many of you have known me for decades. I get to work between 6 and 6:30 most mornings. I meet the B-Tour day shift coming in the early morning hours. Talk to them in the parking lot about multiple things, about their families, about sporting events that's gone on, different things that have occurred, providing them opportunities to open up and see what's going on. I said, is there anything else happening? They've got plenty of opportunity to address me. Those who don't want to address me don't make an effort to address me. There's no written policy saying you can't talk to the sheriff. If you didn't get the day off you wanted, you didn't get the vehicle assignment you wanted, and you're not happy, you have a supervisor for those things. I can't take away the authority of sergeants, lieutenants, captains, and undersheriffs by saying, oh, don't bother with them, just come to me with those day-to-day issues. Those are day-to-day operational issues that they need to deal with. If there's any other issues that they need to talk about, I certainly am available. And in addition to that, I also even catch the midnight shift when they leave several days during the week. Same thing in the parking lot. What's going on? What's happening? I walk through the jail frequently. Stop in the kitchen, grab a cup of coffee, talk to the civilian staff, talk to the inmate workers. One of them I realized had moved back up from Florida to yesterday, is back in our facility again, one of our regulars. These are things that are important that I actually enjoy doing, is having those communications. So if anybody says that they can't talk to me, it's because they don't want to talk to me.
All right, very good. Next question. And I will mention at this point, several of these questions are almost identical in the questions about on his watch and the question that we just asked. So we won't be asking the question again and again and again. We will cover the topic and then we'll move on to another question. Mr. Favreau, you've said on numerous occasions you support SROs and the DARE program. Why do you think you've lost 5 SRO or DARE officers in the past 4 years?
Thank you. Well, one of which I'm not at liberty to discuss much about right now, that is no longer a school resource officer. We've had 1 DARE officer and school resource officer that retired, another one left service, resigning, going down to Florida to open up his dream business of a beer and pizza pub. COVID hit, he lost it. He's back up here now working in the jail as a correction officer and starting from ground up all over again. And then we had 1 other DARE officer who did not want to do police work. He wouldn't stop to an auto accident and help people, and we brought him in and talked to him and said, look, that's part of the job. If you're going to wear a uniform, you have to do police work. So he chose to resign on his own, didn't want to do police work. You can't be a DARE officer and a school resource officer having no police experience and not engaging people in law enforcement and sharing those experiences with the young students. I know, I've done that for about 25 years. Right now we have, I believe, 4 school resource officers that are in the school, but we also have 3 to 4 mental health calls that are stacking, we call in law enforcement, waiting for responses every single day that come in. I said it before and I'll say it again, public safety is paramount. And as a law enforcement executive, you have to stay focused on the greater good of the community at large. I love these programs, and I think anybody in this room cannot argue that since I started DARE in 1991, I taught DARE for 11 years, I've been to hundreds of DARE graduations, I still take great pride in my DARE students coming to me and saying, hey, Mr. Favreau, and even greater pride in those 6, 7, 8-year-old students that I coached in PAL football for over 10 years, coming up and saying, hey, coach, how are you? It's an awesome experience. I wouldn't change what I've done in my past.
Thank you. Sure. We'll bring up Chelsea for a couple questions, and we'll continue with you in just a moment. Thank you. Chelsea, if you'd come up now. What leadership experience have you had that will help you most in the position of sheriff of the county? What leadership experience have you had that will help you most in the position of sheriff of the county?
Okay. So, as I mentioned before, I have been a deputy sheriff for nearly 10 years until just recently. As an officer in the community, and every time I go to a call, I have to manage that situation. People in the community are looking to me for help. I have not held any actual management positions within the sheriff's department. However, again, I have 2 small children. I have to manage them, and I hope to be a good leader for them. That is why I'm doing this, is to be a leader for them, and I want to be a leader for the community. I have a lot of great ideas that I haven't really been able to have a chance to initiate or to hear. My voice really hasn't been heard in the past 10 years. And I'm hoping to now the community gives me that chance to have a voice. So I guess that would be my question.
Very
my
good.
answer.
Stay right here. The next question. Ms. Warick, what makes you different from Sheriff Favreau? What makes you different from Sheriff Favreau?
That's a loaded question. So I should say, first, I believe in women in law enforcement. I believe in women in general. I don't think there is enough support for women in that agency, and I want to be an advocate. I was a school resource officer, and at times it was hard to encourage the young girls in the schools to get into law enforcement with the treatment I was experiencing. I think women have made huge bounds in recent years, and we should keep moving forward with that. Secondly, I've worked the road the past 10 years. The current sheriff hasn't worked the road or been a cop on the road in 20 years. He doesn't know what the community needs. We have evolved as a society as a whole, and I think policing needs to change and needs to change with our times, and that hasn't happened. I've worked with people, I've been in the community for 10 years trying to help and assist, again, without the voice to do it. And I think this is a great opportunity for me to work with the community, work with the officers, whether it be in the jail or on the road, and make things happen that will better our community for us as a whole, my children, my family. So,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Sheriff, if we could bring you back up for a few more questions. Thank you, Chelsea. You had to sit all the way in the back. I didn't work out. I should have given you a seat up front, yes. Next question. What changes and improvements to the Sheriff's Department do you think can be best made by an incumbent? What changes and improvements to the Sheriff's Department do you think can be best made by an incumbent?
I think right now we're dealing with a lot of societal changes. And as I said before, being able to anticipate what is going to be coming into our community and what's happening is critical. The only way you're going to know those things is by attending symposiums, attending seminars, and speaking with law enforcement executives, not just across Clinton County, not just across the state of New York, but across the country. We have annual meetings. We just recently, last week, had a Northern Border Crime Symposium in Lake Placid. Over 100 attendees. Every federal agency, state agencies, and county agencies that you can imagine that attended. They all shared the common goal. We can't get enough people to get into law enforcement. And that was a big issue. The second most common goal, which is something that's really concerning me that I'm going to try and focus on a little bit more, we are seeing more and more firearms in every case we respond to. In the city of Plattsburgh, in the county, state police, we have probably the best interagency law enforcement relationship that I have seen with police agencies in the last couple of years than we've had in decades. It is very strong, and you can smile, but it is very strong. And the road people get things done. They communicate frequently. We've seen it several times. Plattsburgh Police Department recently had a homicide. The acting chief called all the law enforcement agencies together. Within a matter of days, the homicide was resolved. Teamwork, communications, talking together, breaking down those silos of uniform colors and working together. That's been very successful as of late. We need to focus more and more on that, and we need to work on how do we eradicate the illegal weapons that we're seeing in our streets more than we've ever seen before.
All right, very good. And the next question. Are your officers receiving ongoing training on crisis intervention training? Do you coordinate with NAMNI for services for your inmates? And do the inmates receive mental health services? So a few questions there together.
That wasn't my question.
Well, I didn't think so, because the first thing I was going to say is we did a couple recent fundraisers of which we provided funds.
That was my question.
Uh,
Social work, and I've worked with NAMI.
Well, which is good. It's great questions. We've done a couple recent fundraisers to provide monies to NAMI organizations specifically because they needed assistance. We worked very well. Matter of fact, about 4 or 5 hours ago, I spoke with Rochelle Gregory from Clinton County Mental Health. We speak weekly on a multitude of things. We have a crisis intervention counselor in the jail right now. We received a grant 2.5 years ago, I believe it is, from New York State with Champlain Valley Educational Services, providing educational services, parenting classes, community readiness and release. The recidivism rate, according to the statistics that I got from them as of last year, is down to about 17.5%, which is a very, very good percentage as opposed to more than double that in previous years. So yes, we do have a lot of different educational programs. I think we had 116 inmates participate in education service programs, which include mental health services. How do you apply for SNAP? How do you apply for WIC and for different programs that are available in the county?
Also, my question was regarding your officers, your deputies. Are
Yes.
they receiving ongoing training on how to manage and how to do crisis intervention?
I'll be perfectly honest, probably not enough. I don't think we can get enough.
Crisis intervention training that NAMI in New York State and across the country uses with officers? So
Yes. Rochelle also has a program through Clinton County Mental Health, and Rochelle has been working with our patrol chief, trying to get all of our people to continue to go through that. And we do have on-call crisis counselors that when we have critical scenes, and we had one that we had called out just a couple days ago to be able to assist. Very, very helpful. That whole concept needs to build and continue to grow.
Thank you.
And you'll work with Amanda to do that.
I like Amanda. She knows that.
All right, Chelsea, come on back up if you would for a couple more questions. Thank you, Sheriff. This is actually for both of the sheriff candidates, but Chelsea, since you're here now, we'll start with you. What are your thoughts on bail reform going forward? Your thoughts on bail reform going forward?
Tell you, it came out when I was on the road. Say most officers are not a fan of bail reform. It makes our job very difficult. It's very frustrating to, again, arrest someone for a crime, especially and have to release them right away. However, I do think it's better to work with it than against it, since this is what we have to deal with right now. A lot of it is still, again, tied with mental health and drugs. So if we start focusing on those two topics, especially how they interact together with these crimes, it will help us overall. Instead of just arresting our way through things, start having resources. Again, that's where working with the community, finding out what resources we have in the county, and tying them with law enforcement will help us overall.
Okay, and your next question? What are your thoughts on the sheriff's new SRT team? Your thoughts on the sheriff's new SRT team?
Well, like Ms. Trombley had said, education and training is huge with law enforcement officers. However, since that team has been put into place, I can say myself as a road officer and many other road officers have received less training and education for our day-to-day patrols. Most of our resources and funding have gone to this SRT team, which only has a small amount of our officers involved in it.
What is an SRT?
Special response team.
Okay.
So
Like a crisis intervention team? kind of thing?
for more, I guess, serious events. So since that's been in place, again, our day-to-day officers that you are going to get when you call us have received less training and less education on how to handle situations. I think, again, the sheriff's office needs to focus more on community policing, focusing on our mental health, focusing on schools and safety and education in that way. If there's a major school event, having a special response team is not appropriate. We've seen that in cases all over the country. You don't want to wait for that team to go into that school. So that those school resource officers or that first officer on scene needs to have the training to go into that school. And they just aren't receiving that. And I can tell you firsthand, I wasn't receiving as much training at the end of my career there than at the beginning. So I do not support it. Or at least it needs to be more evenly distributed so every officer still continues to have appropriate education and training.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sheriff, if you'd come back up, we have a few more questions for you. Again, a number of the questions are very similar, having to do with the open door policy, which we've asked already, having to do with mental health, wellness. So again, we appreciate all the questions, but some of them are redundant, so we will move on to other topics that we haven't covered yet. Sheriff, this is, again, the question for both of the candidates about what are your thoughts on bail reform going forward? Your thoughts on bail reform going forward?
I'm not a fan of bail reform as it's written. Bail reform was needed. It was, some cases that were brought into the jail were totally inappropriate. Bail reform for us here in Clinton County and many counties was a blessing, and it was a blessing in disguise. Absent bail reform, when COVID hit, many jails in the state of New York would have clearly declared a state of emergency. Their staffing was sick, the inmates were ill, they didn't have the ability to properly run. Had that population not been reduced the 1 year prior to COVID hitting full bloom, we would have had some significant issues here in Clinton County, as would many have counties done. Another thing that bail reform did, it took away a program that Rochelle Gregory and I had done. She had hired a case manager. We were going to do a parenting courses in the female pod. We had 53 females in there. Bail reform dropped that down to 12. Dropped it down to 12 local females, not all of which, of course, had children and had families. It had some good things, it had some bad things. We had a local case and it made national news, I can mention it. Kinter was the name of the defendant. 3 times, the New York State Police, the Sheriff's Department, and the Plattsburgh PD once were involved in high-speed pursuits with this individual, and he was taken out of his vehicle at gunpoint. That was the man that about 2.5 years ago ran through a fence at a naval base, I believe it was Virginia. We can't wait for these type of situations to happen. Those people that have severe mental illness, severe mental culpability, we need to identify those people. Those are the people that need to get treatment. With bail reform, they don't even make it to jail to the intake post. At the intake post gives our officers an opportunity to interview these people and say, are you using any substances? Do you have any problems? What's your family life like? Do you work? Oh, you recently lost your job. Find out what their mental status is and help to try and plug them into services that we have at the facility, and also now with the help of Dana Poirier through CV Tech, afterwards. We can do the follow-through programs when they leave the facility and make sure they're getting the proper care. So bail reform had two pieces.
All right. Next question. Sheriff Favreau, what is your opinion of women in law enforcement? Also, with that, what is your thought on pregnant officers and their roles on the force?
I think any law enforcement administrator that tells you that they can survive without women on the force is crazy. And I've said that before, and I will say that again. They bring a whole diverse perspective, an ability to bring some common sense and to bring a different angle of resolving matters in. We've had very successful. We currently have 3 females right now. We have 1 sergeant. We have an SRO that is working as a 209V for us, and we have another deputy sheriff, all of which are doing absolutely phenomenal and very, very powerful and respected members of our law enforcement team. In the jail, when I started, I believe there were 3 females. We have 14 females that work in the jail. If I had 10 more on a list right now, I would hire them tonight with all of you as witnesses. The problem is we're not getting people, not just females, but we're not getting people to sign up for the law enforcement and the corrections field for a variety of reasons. It's a national crisis. It is not just a Clinton County issue.
Thank you. So, Ms. Warwick, since we've had all the questions for you and you've addressed them, we're going to continue with questions that we've had for the sheriff. We have a few more. Sheriff Favreau, as you know, in 2018, CSEA, which represents your employees in the jail, supported your opponent. Why do you think that happened, and what will you do if your own employees fail to endorse you again?
Well, I'm not going to release that right now, but I will say I've had discussions. In 2018, I respectfully, emphasis on respectfully, declined the interview process. My challenger was somebody that I worked with. It was a colleague. My own union decided that they were going to support him. I heard a variety of reasons why. We wanted to get rid of him. We figured if he was sheriff, we wouldn't have to deal with him. That was some reasons. Other reasons, they liked the guy, a variety of reasons. It's politics, people. It's politics. I don't think I really need to say an awful lot more about that. I'm not going to be disgruntled, not going to be upset if the unions don't endorse me this time. I certainly would like to see that because we've done some wonderful things. We brought in a full body scanner, which has increased morale, increased safety in the jail immensely, that at a cost of $160,000. My relationship with the legislature is phenomenal. We are very successful in gaining what we need to get. We just negotiated one of the best contracts, labor contracts I have ever seen in any labor workforce for our correction officers. We're not where we need to be yet, but we made an awful lot of progress in this one, and we're actually getting there.
All right, thank you. As I've mentioned, I think all of these others are either questions that have already been asked having to do with the open door policy, with mental health training. We asked a question about mental health, but I did not ask about the EO 203. If under that, will mental health training be implemented for your officers?
We have actually worked an awful lot more with Clinton County Mental Health. Of course, keep in mind, we in law enforcement have been plagued with an awful lot of obstacles these past 4 years. And I personally get irritated when people blame COVID for everything, but we can't ignore the fact that we had 2 years of severe disruption of our lives. Schools just now are getting back to normal where teachers, students, and families can function the way we used to function before COVID. So it's very, very challenging. I think working with mental health is certainly going to be critical. In the jail with a smaller population now, it may be something that'll be a little bit more palatable. Before, when we had 250 to 270 inmates on a daily basis, we had a lot of requests from a lot of agencies that wanted to come in and provide some wonderful programs, religious programs, parenting programs, alcohol and substance abuse, mental health programs. We can't bring them all in. There's not enough hours in the day. And it's a very complex situation to be able to do that. But we have provided an awful lot more service. The training and education that Dana Poirier and his team has put together from CV Tech has been immeasurable. We took a complete housing unit and shut it down and turned it into a classroom. Full operational classroom with computers, everything, to help inmates get prepared to be released and go back into the community and be productive members.
Sure, thank you. And that's it, folks. We thank you. We want to thank the candidates for coming tonight. We want to thank the Champlain Valley Business and Professional Women for hosting this event every year, where the candidates come and answer questions. This is still a wonderful event every year. I'm happy to moderate it because it's great where the candidates come and still meet people in public and answer questions. So thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for your questions, and we appreciate you being here. Please get out and vote on November 8th.